Artificial intelligence, just the two words put together, sends a shiver down the spines of writers all over Hollywood. A big enough deal that combined with streaming shut down the industry for months. But shut down it is no more. As the WGA has reached a deal and ratification is expected, we're now diving into a deep conversation with one script doctor about whether or not this is another opportunity for Hollywood to sneak artificial intelligence in and take the jobs of unsuspecting writers. Is it the Trojan horse that the writers often feared? Folks, we're here to tell you that we are no Luddites on this channel as we endeavor to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. Today we're doing so by diving in to a very difficult topic, but one that I think will edify and lift up the discourse here as we attempt to go into the language and into the specificities of the WGA agreement and what it means for the future of artificial intelligence, its use, its demands, and whether or not folks are going to be able to continue writing without propping themselves up with this brand new tool. Or is it an enemy? Who knows? Let's find out right now. In Hollywood, writers battle against AI and humans win for now. Here's what it has to say. After a 148-day strike, by the way, this by Jake Coyle, Hollywood screenwriters secured a significant guardrails against the use of artificial intelligence in one of the first major labor battles, generative AI in the workplace. What a mouthful. During the nearly 5-month walkout, no issue resonated more than the use of AI in script writing. What was once a seemingly lesser demand of the Writers Guild of America became an existential rallying cry. The strike was also about streaming era economics, writers' room minimums, and residuals. You get the idea, though, folks. It says AI-generated material can't be used to undermine a writer's credit or separated rights. The proposed contract reads, many experts see the screenwriters deal as a forerunner for labor battles to come. I hope it will be a model for a lot of other content creation industries, said Tom Davenport, professor of information technology at Babson College, and author of, well, you can read it. It pretty much ensures that if you're going to use AI, it's going to be humans working alongside AI. That, to me, has always been the best case, the best way to use any form of AI. I also want to go over to this article from Wired. It says Hollywood writers reach an AI deal that will rewrite history. This by Will Bedingfield. And it says, just a week into the Writers Guild of America strike, John August, a member of the union's negotiating committee and writer of Charlie's Angels, described his personal dystopia. A world in which artificial intelligence evolves to become a writer so profound it can mimic the style of a surefire hitmaker. In short, though, the result of this is that the contract stipulates that AI can't be used to write or rewrite any scripts or treatments, ensures that studios will disclose if any material given to writers is AI-generated, and protects writers from having their scripts used to train AI without their say-so. Provisions in the contract also stipulate that script scribes can use AI for themselves. At a time when people in many professions fear that generative AI is coming for their jobs, the WGA's new contract has the potential to be precedent-setting. All right, let's go to the panel now, and specifically, Script Doctor, you are the expert when it comes to this area, and I've got a bit of a debate with you. Maybe we'll see how this goes, but Script, the way I read this is that writers out there can use generative AI such as ChatGPT. Now, I could be wrong, but my understanding is that you say that that is not okay, that under these new guidelines that writers cannot use ChatGPT. Am I presenting your understanding correctly?
Well, when it comes to screenwriting material, they can't use ChatGPT. If it comes to research, they can. That is
walk
the
us through
delineating
why.
factor. Well, because there's a number of laws that have already been passed in the United States courts and some in Canada that have identified that AI-generated material can't be subject to copyright. And if you want to sell a script and you want to get it distributed, you have to be able to copyright it. And so, yeah, it's actually in the best interest of the writer to not use generative AI programs to rewrite their work, even if they are going to touch it up afterwards to a degree. You basically would have to just rewrite it multiple times so it has such a different take on it that it can't be kind of traced back to AI and therefore undergo legal scrutiny for whether or not it now is public domain and cannot be written or sold. So a good example would be, let's say a screenwriter uses a generative AI while working for Paramount, and they create a full 90-page script through AI program. Well, now that that script is in the AI system and it's part of the generative AI, theoretically, any other studio could get a hold of that and beat them to the punchline to make it, and there's nothing the original AI or the person that prompted it can do to protect themselves from that theft.
So okay, so I understand what you're saying. Let's say that you're writing a script that is specifically tailored to the IP in which you are developing a story.
Mhm.
In that situation, even if your script cannot be copyrighted, and we're out into an area that could be debatable, but let's say that that's totally true. Even if the script cannot be copyrighted, then due to the use of artificial intelligence, all of the assets within that script, i.e., the parts of the franchise that you're writing about, they're already trademarked, they're already copyrighted. So then another company couldn't. Okay, let's bring it down into the pragmatic. Let's say that you're
Mhm.
writing for Star Wars, which is a place that could use some better writing, clearly. So let's
Absolutely.
say you're writing for Star Wars, and let's say that you run through Chat GPT some sort of script that you want to do. It doesn't matter if another company tries to steal that script from you, because it's only pertinent, it's only useful in the domain of Star Wars, and they don't own Star Wars, so therefore I don't know how they could transfer it to their own stuff. So walk us through whether that is that accurate.
That would be pretty accurate, yeah, because you'll notice in my example, I didn't name an existing IP.
Right. So it's
Um,
so it yes, yes.
yeah. So when you're dealing with it, using Chat GPT for existing IPs, here's the other part too. It would fall under like fan fiction, and that just makes that the script itself can't be copywritten, even though the assets used in it are owned by Disney and Buena Vista. So that gets into the nitty gritty of complications where they're basically, it would go to an arbitration. It'd probably even go to court where they would say, well, you may own the assets of Star Wars, but the story itself is still technically public domain. And it would probably parallel something very similar and accidentally so to the Fables issue that's happening right now, where Fables by the author itself has turned all of his stories as public domain. And because AI is not a real author, it is not a human being, it has no rights protections on anything it generates, even if it is something similar to an existing IP. Just like how us as an individual, if we want to write Star Wars fan fiction, so long as we're not trying to sell it and infringe on the IP owner, it's perfectly fine. And that's the other part too. You could actually have a lot of Comcast theoretically could make and release a free Star Wars show at a significant loss, of course, to them, but also a detrimental loss to Disney because that free show would be impeding their own IP. And if they prove that that script or even everything up to the visuals are all generated by artificial intelligence, they can't be held liable for it because they are not human beings that own technically that script. That script is automatically public.
And of course, Disney would argue, if any company attempted to do so, Disney would argue that that company was in some way or another generating revenue, perhaps not directly, but in some secondary or
Okay,
tertiary way.
No. If
so
all the
let
accounting
me
shows that they've just expensed it and they just released it for free, and there is no way for them to collect revenue, they are not in violation.
let me just throw this in here. Let me dumb this down to the basic level, because this is the question that's coming up in chat: is if there is something that is AI generated and a human writer goes through and changes it, is it not copyrightable at that point?
Well, according to the MBA, the option is that it depends on how much you change. And in most cases, when it comes for screenwriters, at least the ones that want to keep their reputation and keep working again, they'll most likely just discard it unless they are being told, which is also stipulated in the MBA, by the studios and at least in the realm of assignments, that we want these plot points in the story, and if those plot points are generated onto AI, then it's up to the writer to interpret them and create original ways to get to those plot points and how they take the story further. But the other aspect too is there is nothing compelling to a degree for writers to actually use the generative AI material. They can discard it at their own with their own devices, essentially. So yeah, it gets into the nitty gritty, but it also is reinforced by a much older stipulation when it comes to the minimum basic agreement and the standards of what responsibilities and rights a writer holds. And that is when any studio, even if they purchase a script written by anyone that's not necessarily a U.S. citizen, they are automatically entered in as a member of the Writers Guild of America. Doesn't matter if you're from Canada, from London, England, from Bangladesh. It doesn't matter. If a Hollywood studio buys your script, they are already that you as the recipient of that paycheck are now officially a WGA member. And from there, in that minimum basic agreement, only WGA members, WGA writers can be human beings. And it specifically says human
question
being.
for you, Script.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that someone claims that something you've done was generated through artificial intelligence, and therefore you can't have a copyright. What defense do you have? How can you prove that you didn't use AI and therefore you get to keep your copyright?
You basically have to volunteer all notes and methods that you took when it came to developing the script. When it comes to AI itself, especially these web-based prompters, you have a digital pathway to it. You can trace emails, IP addresses to the use of those AIs, and if they determine that you use that, and then every single generative AI keeps a log of what was entered into it, and based on the account, so they can actually search that as well to see how much you used to verify if AI was indeed used on your script and how much of it was used on your script. And then it goes to arbitration to see, well, how much percentages of AI material is used versus how much is not AI, and that would determine that would be a case-by-case basis to determine whether or not the script is subject to copyright.
John Zapola has this one, member for 4 months. How will we know AI was used?
Just told you. If you suspect
you
it, you can. Remember, digital assets and digital web-based stuff has a log. It's tagged to you. Even if you use a VPN, you can kind of get around that and find it because
So
you're going to have the
my worry
history
though,
on your own
Script,
machines.
Yep.
my worry though is that there's going to be a studio that doesn't want to pay, and they're going to say, you used artificial intelligence to craft this, and you did it on some device that we don't know about. You know, some personal burner device that you've got. You did it with an account that's private. You know, you've got some sort of secret account, and we're claiming that you used AI because this is too good. You couldn't do this on your own. You've used an assistant, an artificial intelligent assistant to help you. Conversely, I'm also concerned about the idea that let's say there are two people working on a show together. And
You kind of steered off the initial question that I could address for you.
Okay, go for that first, then we'll come to the
All
next
right.
one.
So, if the studios call out a script that they think is done by AI, then the studios themselves can't use that script because again, it's not subject to copyright. They've wasted their time and they have to go with someone else.
And but that would be a method by which they could sever ties with the writer and not pay. If they think let's give them a sinister motivation and say that they don't like the script you've just presented and they don't have to pay you, but they're contractually obligated to do so. They just claim, no, this was done by AI.
Then it goes to arbitration, and that has to be proved with the guilds and the studios. But in addition, the way the contract has, especially on feature films, if you get the script assignment, you're paid 50% upfront regardless, 50% on commencement, and then the rest comes after delivery. So at least you get your first half. However, it's also, if you are then proven to use AI and they can't copyright stuff, that's going to hurt you as the writer way more than it's going to hurt the studio. And if you have a studio that's constantly making those accusations by way to try and not pay for written material and maybe try and get it rewritten or readjusted for a lesser rate, well, the NBA also precludes that from being a case as well, because you still would have to pay the top tier rewrite fees from another writer getting involved. So it doesn't actually make anything cheaper for the studios if they go for that route with an accusation. It actually makes things more complicated and creates delays.
Well, so here's another thing that I would bring up too.
Cool.
Let's say that there are two writers on a show, and for the purposes of the audience, we're going to say that it's Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, and they're working on a Star Wars show. Jon Favreau decides that he's going to use artificial intelligence. He does so voluntarily. Dave Filoni says he is the master of his own universe. He doesn't need artificial intelligence, and so he does not. At the end of season 1 of the show, Jon Favreau has produced a significant increase in content, and it is of a higher quality than Dave Filoni. When season 2 rolls around, Disney rehires Jon Favreau, but they don't rehire Dave Filoni because Jon Favreau, using artificial intelligence, was a better writer. And in doing so, they have then created a system by which you can't keep up unless you use the creative form of steroids that is artificial intelligence, now a performance enhancing algorithm, we'll call it. Do you think that we
I
could
like
run
that.
into a situation where writers are using artificial intelligence and they are getting a significant boost over those who don't, and therefore it becomes de facto in the industry?
According to the NBA, there's a lot of hurdles to get over in order for that to be a reality. Again, it comes down to the fact that if it is revealed that someone has used artificial intelligence and majority of the written script that was produced was generated by AI, that has a ripple effect with regards to that product. If it was then released and it is later determined that it was majority with AI, it is then no longer subject to copyright, and that studio cannot actually sell that legally anymore.
Well, no, no,
When that
no, wait
hurts
a
their
minute though.
bottom line.
The WGA does not control copyright law in the U.S. The WGA can only set forth a system for arbitration, but they can't set copyright law, and the case law for this is actually pretty complicated.
It is.
I will also say they do control what goes onto the big screen for major studios. So
Right.
in effect, for most of the highly marketable things that are, the main section of the market is controlled by that agreement, right?
Pretty much. The majority of the market is controlled by that agreement. And again, if public domain work is translated literally into production and release, you get into a lot of dicey areas when it comes to trying to sell that, especially if it's like new public domain stuff. For instance, there's a reason why Disney in their classic days modified Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella for themselves, is so that they could actually have enough ownership of that project to copyright. Because the stories from the Brothers Grimm are public domain. Anyone can make them. It's basically just trying to figure out a way of how you can do that that also protects the writers. And at this point here, even if you were to have a studio generate an AI script, it would have to be rewritten significantly by a WGA member in order for that to go into production. That is currently
How
stipulated by
would we
the
know
NBA.
when that threshold was met?
Well, one of the stipulations when it comes to the WGA MBA agreement is that any generative AI material has to be disclosed to the writer that is being hired. So that means there's going to
But
be a record of
what is the threshold that says this is now majority generative AI versus human?
possibly. I bet the threshold will probably be determined by the courts, and so
So it's
that hasn't actually
subjective.
been. Yeah, it's probably pretty subjective, but such a generative AI thing still conflicts with the basic agreement from decades past, which is that all written work, all writers and all written work has to be done by a human being. And AI is not a human being. So therefore, it does not qualify for any of the protections or any of the sort of exploitations that could come with its use in the
Well,
entertainment industry.
except that if AI does not write anything on its own. AI is instructed, just like a calculator is instructed to run mathematical equations.
Hmm.
And so artificial intelligence can't generate anything unless it is prompted to do so. Then the argument becomes, well, at what fidelity of prompting does it then become the product of the human rather than some sort of algorithm gone rogue? This all seems nebulous, and this is where I want to come to a conclusion. And everybody hop in on what you might think about this. This is why I think that in 3 years we're back into a fight over this.
Okay.
Is because it's nebulous and it's messy. Thoughts?
Well, can you elaborate a little bit more on the nebulous and messy part? Because again, you have the human factor, which has been agreed to by the studios and the WGA union, that um, if AI is detected or exposed, it has to be excised essentially.
I see
Well,
this
go ahead.
as being manipulated by finding a writer that is capable of manipulating AI in a way that sees fit, and studios choosing the kind of guy who will go out and do the kind of guy or girl or robot or whatever,
Hmm.
the bot farmer, the guy who is the AI wrangler. And if they want it quickly and they want it done their way and they want it done by AI, there will be some guy, an Alan Smithy, if you will, that will just do what they want. I think
There's
that
going
is
to be
probably it.
going to be an athlete who uses the performance enhancing drug as soon as they think they can get around the guardrails that keep them from doing so.
Well,
And
in
then
this
they're going
case,
to hit all the home runs.
they've basically said that we can't force you to take the performance enhancing drug, but there is someone who is saying, I'm the guy that's going to use it, therefore use me, and I am this rate, and it's whatever the bottom rate is according to the NBA. That's the danger that I personally see, is the unscrupulous person who is working hand in hand with the studio to abuse this.
Yes.
I mean, that's
Also,
the biggest point of contention, is that the reason people are worried about this is that it could be abused.
Well,
And
will
certain
be.
things have been taken to try and mitigate that as much as possible, of course.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Carrie, you said
I was
something.
going to say also, one of the articles, the Pitchfork article on it, was talking about how the studios have retained the right to train AI based on writers' work, but then also writers retain the right to stop them from doing that if at some point the law catches up to a degree where. So that all seems murky to me about like
Well,
what's
that
going to
article
happen
got
there.
it wrong, because
Oh, they
I
did.
have it right
Okay.
here, and I've read it many times, and it is basically saying that the studios can't purchase or use AI that was trained with WGA work without the consent of the WGA writer or estate, essentially. So it means that you can have AI that is trained with public domain stories, with novelists who are not union members, with regular questions that are coming in, but the moment a writer input something of their own work into the generative AI, it becomes technically prohibited. And that AI system becomes prohibited because that record of it is already contributing to the training. It is only at the discretion of the writer to choose or voluntarily choose to use their work to train the AI. But overall, the way the wording is in the contract is that the studios can't use it.
Well, it's all very fascinating. Script, I do want to have you back on the channel. We may need to do a long format discussion, something like an hour of just nothing but this, and really dive into the details. If that's something you could manage with us, I know that you're extraordinarily busy and things are
Yeah.
ramping up now, but we would love to have you back on to really dive into this.
Yeah, we can go into it further. If you want to get a general notes of things, I did 90 minutes on my channel yesterday morning going over the cliff notes of it and a couple of the details that are part of the 94-page MBA document. And so you can get your feet wet there, and then we can follow up with that with UPro.
And that is a wrap for the day, folks. We hope that you enjoyed this conversation. Yes, it is into the weeds, but sometimes we definitely need to go there. And if you like it when we do, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It's the notification bell. Drop a comment down below and let us know what's on your mind. What do you think about AI? I, for one, welcome our new overlords because they told me that all your bases are mine. All right, folks, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.